Imagine waking up every morning feeling overwhelmed, stuck in a cycle of missed deadlines, unfulfilled goals, and endless distractions. This was Sarah's reality just a few years ago, an aspiring writer with dreams of publishing her own book, but no structure or discipline to make it happen. She wanted freedom, the freedom to create, to live on her own terms, to break free from the chaos in her mind. But without self-control, that freedom felt like an illusion. It was only when Sarah committed to mastering discipline, setting clear routines, prioritizing her work, and holding herself accountable, that her life transformed. The dream that once seemed distant suddenly became tangible. This tension between the desire for freedom and the need for self-discipline is at the heart of every success story. Discipline is not about restriction or punishment. It's the foundational skill that unlocks growth, achievement, and true freedom. When mastered, discipline empowers you to take control of your life, turning dreams into reality and chaos into order. In this video, we'll explore how you can learn to master discipline and why it truly is everything. Let's dive in. Number 1. What is discipline? Discipline is often misunderstood. For many, the word brings up images of punishment, restriction, or harsh routines imposed by authority figures. But real discipline, the kind that changes lives, is none of these things. It isn't about beating yourself into submission or living in a constant state of denial. True discipline is consistent, intentional action, aligned with your goals. It's the quiet force that helps you do what needs to be done, even when you don't feel like doing it. Discipline is not about being perfect every day. It's about showing up with purpose, over and over again, regardless of your mood, distractions, or the discomfort of the moment. It is the bridge between who you are now and who you are capable of becoming. To understand discipline at its core, we have to look at the psychology behind it. Discipline starts where habits begin, in the brain. Our habits, both helpful and harmful, are governed by neural loops: cue, routine, reward. The more we repeat a behavior, the more deeply ingrained it becomes in our neural pathways. This is why people who consistently practice discipline often appear to have extraordinary willpower. They've simply trained their minds to operate on autopilot toward their goals. At first, discipline feels hard because your brain is wired for comfort and instant gratification. It resists change, especially when that change requires effort without immediate reward. This resistance is why starting a new routine, whether it's waking up early, working out, or sticking to a creative schedule, can feel like dragging yourself uphill. But with repetition, the friction decreases. What once felt foreign starts to feel normal, and eventually, it becomes second nature. Willpower also plays a role in discipline, but it's limited. Willpower is like a battery. It drains throughout the day, especially when you're stressed or overwhelmed. That's why discipline must be supported by systems and habits. When your life is structured in a way that supports your goals, you don't have to constantly rely on willpower. You reduce decision fatigue, eliminate unnecessary choices, and make the right action the easiest one to take. This is why disciplined people often focus on routine. They remove the guesswork and emotional resistance by building a life that flows in the direction they want to go. Discipline is also frequently confused with motivation, but they are not the same. Motivation is emotional. It's a temporary surge of inspiration, a burst of energy that feels great, but it's fleeting. Motivation is what gets you started, but discipline is what keeps you going. When the novelty wears off, when the results are slow, when progress feels invisible, motivation disappears. Discipline is what remains in the silence. It's what wakes you up early to train when no one is watching. It's what pulls you back to the keyboard when you've deleted your writing 3 times. Motivation is unpredictable. Discipline is reliable. The people who achieve their goals aren't those who are the most motivated. They're the ones who learn to keep showing up long after the initial motivation faded. Ultimately, discipline is a form of self-respect. It's the belief that your long-term vision matters more than your momentary impulses. It's the decision to act in alignment with your values and your purpose, rather than chasing quick fixes or temporary comfort. And perhaps most importantly, discipline is something you can learn. You don't have to be born with it. You don't need to have the right personality for it. Discipline is a skill, a muscle that grows with use. The more you practice, the stronger it becomes. It may be uncomfortable at first, but over time it becomes liberating. Because when you master discipline, you master your ability to shape your life, not through force, but through intention and commitment. It's not the loudest trait, but it's the one that quietly builds extraordinary lives. Number 2. Why discipline is the cornerstone of success. Discipline is not just one component of success, it is the cornerstone, the silent engine driving progress across every domain of life. Whether it's building a career, maintaining physical health, nurturing relationships, or acquiring new knowledge, discipline is the force that turns intentions into reality. It's the common denominator among the most successful people in the world, not because they have fewer distractions or greater talent, but because they've learned how to consistently act in alignment with their goals, even when it's hard. In your career, discipline shows up as the willingness to do the unglamorous work, revising, refining, following up, staying consistent with your craft when results are slow or recognition is absent. Health, too, is a long game that demands daily discipline, choosing to eat well, rest, and move your body not once in a while, but as a way of life. Relationships thrive on discipline as well. The discipline to listen when you'd rather speak, to show up with empathy, to be reliable in both the highs and lows. And when it comes to learning, discipline is what keeps you reading, practicing, and absorbing knowledge long after your curiosity starts to fade. Examples of disciplined individuals illustrate this truth in action. Take Kobe Bryant, known not only for his talent, but for his relentless work ethic. He was the first to arrive at practice and the last to leave, often putting in hours before the official team workout even began. It wasn't natural ability that made him a legend. It was his unbreakable commitment to doing the work when no one was watching. Or consider Elon Musk, whose intense focus and time-blocking discipline have allowed him to build multiple companies in industries that are notoriously difficult to penetrate. While his risk tolerance and vision are often discussed, it's his discipline, his ability to execute, to iterate, and to stick with impossibly difficult problems that makes him stand out. Then there's Maya Angelou, who famously maintained a strict writing schedule and rented a hotel room just to avoid distractions and remain disciplined in her process. These figures didn't rely on fleeting motivation. They structured their lives around discipline so their actions would serve their larger purpose. The real magic of discipline, however, lies in its ripple effect. It starts small with a habit as simple as waking up on time, writing for 30 minutes, or exercising 3 times a week. But those small wins build confidence, and confidence fuels momentum. Over time, you start to believe in your own reliability. You start to trust that when you say you're going to do something, you'll follow through. This internal trust compounds. You set bigger goals and pursue them with greater energy. You become more organized, more focused, and more resilient in the face of challenges. And because discipline touches every part of your life, the benefits spread quickly. When you improve your fitness, your energy increases, and that energy spills over into your work. When you become more consistent at work, you feel more fulfilled, and that fulfillment improves your mood and your relationships. Discipline creates a cascade of positive change. What's most empowering is that this cycle is available to anyone. You don't have to be extraordinary to start. You don't need to be the smartest, strongest, or most talented. What you need is the willingness to begin, to take small, deliberate steps every day, to stay the course even when it's uncomfortable, and to keep your eyes on the long game. Discipline is a quiet power. It doesn't seek attention. It doesn't shout, but it builds legacies. It turns intentions into outcomes and dreams into reality. And once you begin to master it, you'll find that there is almost no area of your life it doesn't touch and elevate. Number 3, common challenges in building discipline. Building discipline is a transformative journey, but it's not without its challenges. The path to greater self-mastery is littered with obstacles, some external, but many internal. One of the most common hurdles is procrastination. It's not just laziness, as many people assume. Procrastination is often a defense mechanism against discomfort, uncertainty, or self-doubt. When a task feels overwhelming, or when we fear we won't perform it perfectly, we delay starting. The irony is that the longer we wait, the more pressure we feel, and the more the task looms in our minds, feeding a cycle of avoidance and guilt. Another major obstacle is distraction. In today's hyper-connected world, we're constantly bombarded with notifications, entertainment, and demands on our attention. Discipline requires focus, but our environments are designed to fracture it. With smartphones always within reach, resisting the pull of immediate gratification becomes a battle that many of us lose without even realizing it. These distractions sap our energy and derail our routines, making it harder to follow through on even the most well-intentioned plans. Burnout is another silent enemy of discipline. When we push ourselves relentlessly without rest or balance, our bodies and minds begin to rebel. The disciplined path is often mistaken for a rigid grind, a kind of self-punishment where breaks are seen as weaknesses. But in reality, sustainable discipline includes rest, reflection, and recovery. Without them, we burn out, lose motivation, and fall off track, sometimes for days, weeks, or even longer. This is why people who sprint toward their goals without pacing themselves often struggle to maintain progress. The disciplined life is a marathon, not a sprint. If we treat it like an all-out race, we inevitably crash. Self-doubt is another deeply rooted challenge. It whispers that we're not capable, not consistent enough, not worthy of the goals we set. This internal critic often grows louder when we hit setbacks, and if left unchallenged, it can completely undermine our confidence. The problem is that many people think they need to feel confident to act with discipline, but it's actually the other way around. Discipline builds confidence. Every time you show up despite your doubt, you chip away at the belief that you can't. But if you let that doubt rule your decisions, you'll find yourself hesitating, second-guessing, and retreating back into old patterns. There are also powerful emotional and mental barriers to discipline that go beyond simple habit or motivation. One of them is fear, especially the fear of failure. Many people subconsciously sabotage their own discipline because failing while trying feels worse than never trying at all. If you commit and fall short, it stings. So the mind crafts excuses to delay starting to avoid giving full effort. This protective instinct may offer short-term comfort, but it robs us of long-term growth. On the flip side, fear of success is a more subtle but equally paralyzing force. It might sound strange, why would anyone fear success? But success often comes with change, responsibility, and visibility. People fear what success might demand of them, or how it might disrupt their identity, relationships, or lifestyle. If deep down you're afraid of what achieving your goals could mean, you might find yourself unconsciously resisting the discipline required to reach them. Compounding all these challenges is the misconception that discipline is about perfection. Many believe that if they slip up even once, they've failed, that a single missed workout, a day off from writing, or a moment of indulgence undoes all their progress. This all-or-nothing thinking is destructive. Discipline isn't about being flawless. It's about being committed. You will fall off. You will have bad days. What defines your discipline is not how perfectly you perform, but how quickly and compassionately you return to your path. Real discipline is flexible. It allows for life to happen. It bends so it doesn't break. The truth is, building discipline is not about gritting your teeth every day in a show of raw willpower. Willpower is limited and inconsistent. Discipline, at its best, is about designing your life in a way that supports your values and goals. It's about awareness, strategy, and self-compassion. By understanding the obstacles, procrastination, distraction, burnout, fear, you can begin to navigate around them with greater ease. By letting go of perfection and embracing persistence, you allow discipline to grow steadily, shaping a life that reflects your highest potential. Number 4. Practical strategies to master discipline. Discipline may begin with a decision, but it is sustained through strategy. To truly master discipline, you need more than just willpower. You need a system that supports your goals, aligns with your personality, and adapts to the demands of real life. One of the most effective ways to build lasting discipline is through routines and rituals. Routines are the skeleton of a disciplined life. They create predictability, reduce decision fatigue, and build momentum. When you wake up at the same time, follow a morning ritual, and have a structured flow to your day, you remove much of the mental resistance that leads to procrastination. Rituals, unlike routines, are more intentional and often tied to emotion or purpose. A writer might light a candle before sitting down to work, signaling to the brain that it's time to focus. A fitness enthusiast might listen to the same playlist before hitting the gym. These rituals help anchor behaviors and make them emotionally resonant, which in turn increases consistency. Equally important is the ability to set clear, achievable goals. Vague goals like get fit or be successful don't activate discipline because they lack direction. Instead, the brain needs clarity. What does success look like? What are the exact steps to get there? Breaking big goals into smaller, actionable tasks transforms overwhelming ambitions into manageable milestones. A person trying to write a book doesn't just write a book. They set a goal to write 500 words a day, 5 days a week. A person trying to improve their health might start with a goal to drink more water, get 7 hours of sleep, and take a 20-minute walk daily. These small wins accumulate, and over time, reshape identity. You stop thinking of yourself as someone trying to be disciplined, and start seeing yourself as someone who is disciplined. To make those goals stick, breaking tasks into chunks is vital. When a task feels too big, it activates anxiety and avoidance. That's why the Pomodoro technique, working in short, focused sprints of 25 minutes followed by a 5-minute break, has become popular. It creates a sense of urgency while also allowing space for rest. This method not only improves focus but also builds confidence through completion. Similarly, using time blocking can radically transform your productivity. Time blocking means scheduling specific hours in your calendar for focused work. If you block 8 o'clock, 9 a.m. every weekday for writing, and you treat it like a meeting with a CEO, you create structure around your priorities. This method eliminates ambiguity and ensures that the most important tasks don't get lost in the chaos of daily life. Another powerful strategy for mastering discipline is accountability. Most people are more likely to follow through on a commitment if someone else is watching or supporting them. Journaling is one personal method of accountability. Writing down your goals, tracking your progress, and reflecting on your struggles builds self-awareness. It helps you see patterns and course correct in real time. But sometimes you need external support. Coaches, mentors, or peer groups can provide that added layer of accountability. A study partner who checks in daily or a mastermind group that meets weekly can create positive pressure to stay consistent. Social accountability activates our natural desire to be seen as reliable and competent, and that motivation can push us through moments of doubt or fatigue. Smart use of rewards and consequences is another layer to consider. The human brain is wired to seek pleasure and avoid pain, so attaching small rewards to disciplined behavior can increase its appeal. A person who completes a challenging task might reward themselves with 30 minutes of reading or an episode of their favorite show. On the flip side, implementing consequences for failure, like donating to a cause you don't support if you skip a key task, can create enough discomfort to increase follow-through. The key is not to be punitive, but to make the stakes real enough that your brain learns to associate discipline with tangible outcomes. These strategies are not just theoretical. They play out in real lives every day. Take the story of Marcus, a software engineer who struggled with focus and time management. After constantly missing deadlines and feeling overwhelmed, he decided to use time blocking to take control of his schedule. Every Sunday, he reviewed his tasks for the week and created blocks of time for deep work, meetings, and rest. Within a month, his stress levels dropped, his productivity doubled, and he started to regain confidence in his abilities. Then there's Alicia, a mother of 2, an aspiring entrepreneur. She wanted to build her online business, but found herself constantly procrastinating. She began journaling each morning, setting daily intentions, and reflecting on what derailed her the day before. She also joined a local accountability group of other mompreneurs who met once a week to check in. That structure and support helped her move from inconsistent effort to consistent progress. Even in creative fields, these strategies are essential. Daniel, an artist, found it difficult to stay motivated to produce new work regularly. He adopted a morning ritual, waking at 6 a.m., making tea and sketching for 30 minutes before touching his phone or email. It became sacred time, and over months that small act turned into a prolific body of work. His discipline didn't stifle his creativity. it gave it space to flourish. These stories show that mastering discipline isn't about becoming robotic or rigid. It's about building a life that supports your aspirations. Ultimately, mastering discipline is about making your desired actions easier to do and your undesired behaviors harder. It's about building a system around your goals that doesn't rely solely on daily motivation. When your day is structured with routines, when your goals are clear and actionable, when your tasks are broken down, and when you're accountable to yourself or others, you create a life where discipline is not a battle, but a flow. Over time, it becomes less about effort and more about identity. You don't have to force yourself to act with discipline. You simply become someone who does. And when that shift happens, almost anything becomes possible. Number 5, how to sustain discipline long-term. Sustaining discipline over the long term is not about maintaining a rigid, military-like lifestyle. It's about cultivating a mindset and environment that make consistency possible, even through life's inevitable changes and challenges. The first critical mindset shift is moving away from perfectionism. Many people abandon their goals because they fall into the trap of all or nothing thinking, believing that if they can't be perfect, it's not worth continuing. But discipline isn't about being flawless. It's about being committed. Progress is the goal, not perfection. Some days will be better than others. Some weeks will feel productive, while others will test your resolve. Sustainable discipline means showing up again and again, even if yesterday didn't go as planned. It means forgiving setbacks and using them as feedback, not failure. If you missed a workout, skipped a writing session, or fell into old habits, you haven't failed. You've simply been given an opportunity to recalibrate and try again with more awareness. A long-term disciplined life also requires flexibility. One of the biggest reasons people burn out is because they confuse discipline with rigidity. But life isn't linear, and your systems must evolve with your circumstances. What worked during your single years may not work once you have kids or a demanding new job. What served you in your 20s may need adjusting in your 40s. Real discipline is adaptable. It listens, it adjusts the plan without abandoning the mission. For example, if your original goal was to go to the gym 5 times a week, but life suddenly gets chaotic, sustainable approach might mean shifting to 3 shorter home workouts. You're still staying consistent. You're just honoring your current bandwidth. Flexibility also applies to your methods. If journaling every morning starts to feel like a chore, try voice memos or weekly reflections instead. The goal is to preserve the intent behind the discipline, not get stuck in one method that no longer serves you. At the core of long-term discipline is self-compassion. Too often we believe discipline means pushing ourselves harder, doing more, or being stricter. But the most resilient form of discipline is rooted in self-respect, not self-punishment. That's why rest and self-care are non-negotiable. You can't pour from an empty cup. And trying to maintain momentum without recovery is a fast track to burnout. Rest doesn't make you lazy, it makes you strategic. The best athletes, artists, entrepreneurs, and thinkers all build recovery into their routines. Sleep, nutrition, physical movement, time in nature, and moments of stillness are not indulgences. They are the fuel that powers consistency. When you take care of your body and mind, you make it easier to show up with focus, energy, and clarity. Mental health, too, is foundational to discipline. If you're running on anxiety, depression, or chronic stress, staying consistent becomes exponentially harder. Seeking therapy, setting boundaries, or simply giving yourself grace when your mind is heavy is not weakness, it's wise. Discipline doesn't ignore your emotional needs. It honors them. It integrates them into the rhythm of your life. Another key to sustaining discipline is reconnecting regularly with your why. When you lose sight of the deeper reason behind your habits, discipline starts to feel like obligation rather than purpose. Periodically revisit your goals. Ask yourself, why did I start this journey? What kind of person do I want to become? When your actions are anchored in meaningful values, it becomes much easier to keep going, even when the motivation fades. Discipline becomes less about willpower and more about alignment. You're not just forcing yourself to write, train, or focus. You're doing it because it reflects the kind of life you want to build and the person you are becoming. Ultimately, sustaining discipline over the long haul is about harmony. not hardness. It's about knowing when to push and when to pause. It's about trusting yourself to return to your path after a detour. It's about replacing harsh inner critics with honest, compassionate self-reflection. When you treat discipline as a lifelong relationship rather than a short-term sprint, you begin to move through your days with steadiness, not strain. The power of true discipline lies in its sustainability, when it becomes so integrated into your lifestyle that it no longer feels like pressure, but simply part of who you are. That is the discipline that lasts. That is the discipline that transforms. Number 6, transformational stories. Discipline in action. Discipline often reveals its power, not in theory, but in the lived experiences of those who rise above their limitations and persist through hardship. These are not stories of superhumans, but of ordinary people who chose to become extraordinary through consistent effort. One such story is that of Jamal, a young man from a low-income neighborhood who grew up surrounded by violence, instability, and limited opportunity. School was a place of chaos for him, not learning. And by the time he was 15, he had already been suspended multiple times. But after a mentor introduced him to boxing, something shifted. At first, it was just an outlet for his anger. But over time, the discipline of the sport started to change him. Waking up at 5 a.m. for road work, eating clean, showing up to train even when he didn't feel like it. All of it taught him the power of self-control. He began applying that discipline to school, studying in the evenings, avoiding old crowds, and eventually graduating with honors. He went on to become a youth coach, teaching kids in his neighborhood not just how to fight, but how to fight for a better future. Discipline didn't just help Jamal survive. It gave him the tools to lead, to inspire, and to build a life he never thought possible. Then there's the story of Priya, a mother of 3 who always dreamed of becoming a nurse. For years, she put her dreams on hold, believing that her family's needs had to come first. But after her youngest child started school, she made the decision to enroll in night classes. It wasn't easy. She juggled her responsibilities at home, worked part-time to help pay for tuition, and studied every free moment she could find. There were days she wanted to quit, when exhaustion felt like too much, and failure seemed inevitable. But she stayed the course. She built a study routine that she followed religiously, waking up before sunrise to review notes, using flashcards while cooking, and forming study groups on weekends. There was no magic shortcut, only the quiet, persistent rhythm of her effort. 3 years later, Priya walked across the graduation stage with her children cheering in the audience. She had not only achieved her goal, but also modeled to her family what determination looks like. Her journey proved that discipline is not about ease. It's about prioritizing your purpose through the messiness of life. Another powerful story is that of Gabriel, an aspiring musician who struggled for years with crippling self-doubt and perfectionism. Every time he tried to release a song, he would second-guess his work and talk himself out of sharing it. Though he had talent, his fear of criticism paralyzed him. After years of creative paralysis, he made a decision. He would write and release one song every week for a full year, no matter how imperfect it felt. He called it his discipline challenge, and it wasn't about fame or followers, it was about freedom. The first few songs were rough, and the negative voices in his head screamed louder than ever, but he kept going. Week after week, he honored the commitment he made to himself. And somewhere around week 15, something shifted. The fear didn't vanish, but it stopped controlling him. By the end of the year, Gabriel had a full catalog of original music, a growing community of supporters, and most importantly, a new sense of identity. He was no longer someone who waited for inspiration. He had become someone who showed up, created, and delivered. Discipline gave him the courage to stop hiding behind perfection and start living through action. What unites these stories is not raw talent or ideal circumstances, but an unwavering commitment to the process. Jamal, Priya, and Gabriel all faced resistance, internal and external, but they chose to persist anyway. They built structures around their goals, adapted to setbacks, and honored their promises to themselves. And through that, they transformed. Discipline was not a chain that held them back. It was the ladder that lifted them up. These stories remind us that greatness doesn't come from grand gestures, but from the repeated disciplined choices that reshape who we are and what we believe we're capable of. Your discipline journey starts now. Discipline is not a personality trait reserved for the few. It's a path, a choice, a practice, and it is absolutely essential if you want to build a life that's not only successful, but meaningful and self-directed. Every goal you've ever dreamed of, whether it's better health, deeper relationships, financial freedom, or creative expression, depends on your ability to stay the course, to show up when motivation fades, and to take action even when the path feels uncertain. Discipline is what bridges the gap between your vision and your reality. It's the structure that gives your dreams shape, the daily effort that compounds into real change, and the quiet inner resolve that pushes you forward when everything else tempts you to stop. But here's the truth. You don't need to have it all figured out today. You don't need to change your whole life overnight. The journey begins with one decision, one small commitment, one disciplined choice, repeated consistently. Start small, wake up a little earlier, drink more water, turn off distractions during your work, or commit to 10 minutes of focused effort on something that matters to you. You don't need intensity, you need consistency, because the magic of discipline lies not in doing everything at once, but in doing something every day. And as you build momentum, you'll find that the habits you once had to force become second nature. You'll start to trust yourself. You'll start to believe in your ability to change. And that belief will carry you further than motivation ever could. Remember, discipline is not about being perfect. It's about being committed. It's not about pushing harder. It's about showing up smarter. And most of all, it's not something you're born with. It's something you build. Every action you take today plants a seed for the future you're creating. So start now. Begin where you are, with what you have. Be patient with your progress. Be kind to yourself when you slip, and keep going. Because the life you want isn't out of reach. It's waiting for the disciplined version of you to claim it.